Tonight, Asia opens, and the silver market is forced to choose paper promises or physical reality. In the last 72 hours, margin costs exploded, real metal vanished from dealers, and a global price gap stretched so wide it can't survive the night. Welcome to my channel. If you want calm analysis when everyone else is screaming, subscribe now, because when markets snap, the warning always comes before the headline. And drop a comment. What country are you watching from tonight? I want to see where this signal is spreading. Now listen carefully, because what happened is not volatility. What happened is pressure. Coordinated, mechanical, and timed. In plain English, the exchange just made it dramatically more expensive to hold silver positions, twice, within 3 days. At the exact same time, physical silver started disappearing from the retail pipeline. That combination is not random. It is the classic setup where the screen price gets pushed down while the real-world price quietly climbs. And when Asia opens, the two prices collide. Let's break down the first weapon, margin. Most people hear margin hike and tune out. They think it's paperwork. It's not. Margin is the gatekeeper to the futures market. It decides who can stay in the game and who gets kicked out. When you buy a silver futures contract, you don't pay the full value. You post collateral, a deposit, a bond. The exchange sets that deposit, and it can change it anytime it wants. Raise the deposit and you don't just increase safety. You force weaker hands to liquidate. You force funds to reduce exposure. You force small traders to sell, fast, because they can't wire an extra mountain of cash overnight. Now here's what makes the last 72 hours so unusual. It wasn't one adjustment. It was a 1-2 punch. First hike, then another, stacked, back to back, before the market could even digest the first. That is not routine. That is a clamp. And the numbers are brutal. The cost to carry one silver position didn't creep higher. It launched. It went from manageable to, "Are you kidding me?" in the span of a weekend. For anyone running leverage, anyone, this becomes a forced decision. Pay up immediately or close the position. This is how you manufacture selling without changing the fundamentals. And that brings us to the timing. Silver just went through a violent paper move. The kind of move that shakes confidence, triggers stops, and makes headlines that say, "Bubble popped." Then, right after, margin requirements jump again. Ask yourself a simple question. If the market is already falling, who benefits from raising the cost of holding longs at that exact moment? It doesn't punish the shorts. Shorts love falling prices. It punishes the longs, the people who were positioned for a rebound, or a squeeze, or a fundamental reprice. It forces them to become sellers into weakness. That is the mechanism. Now, if this were only a paper story, you could stop here. You could say, okay, futures got messy. But this is not only paper. Because while the screen price was whipping around, something else was happening, quietly, dangerously, where it actually matters. Physical silver started going missing. Not running low, not a bit delayed. Missing. Dealers started saying the words nobody wants to hear. We're not sure we can source more. Mints started pausing sales. Large outlets started pulling listings. And when multiple independent players do that at the same time, it isn't marketing. It isn't a promotion. It's the supply chain saying, we can't get metal at anything close to the screen price. This is where the story turns from trading into reality. Because there are two silver markets living on top of each other like two timelines. Timeline 1 is paper silver. Futures, swaps, ETFs, numbers. It can be created in seconds. It can be dumped in bulk. It can be rolled, netted, settled, cash settled, hedged, and played like a video game. Timeline 2 is physical silver. Bars, coins, industrial stock. The ounce that must be mined, refined, shipped, insured, stored. The ounce that takes time. The ounce that cannot be printed because it weighs something. When paper falls but physical disappears, that isn't bearish. That is a dislocation. And dislocations don't resolve gently. They resolve violently. Here's the simplest way to feel it. Imagine a grocery store where the sign says, eggs are cheap, but the shelves are empty. If the price is truly cheap, why aren't the shelves full? If the supply is truly abundant, why are retailers shutting down sales? The answer is the same every time. The sign is lying, because the inventory is the truth. Now let's talk about the global gap, because this is where the numbers stop being interesting and start being terrifying. In parts of Asia, silver is trading at levels that make the Western paper price look like a coupon. Not a small premium, not a few percent. A gap so wide that if it were stable, it would create a risk-free arbitrage machine. Buy here, sell there, until the prices converge. And yet the gap persists. That tells you something. The barrier is not information. The barrier is metal. The metal is not freely moving. The metal is not unlimited. The metal is not being offered at the paper price and size. So the local physical market is pricing scarcity, while the paper market is pricing liquidation. And when those two stories compete, only one can win. Here's the uncomfortable logic. Paper can stay cheap as long as the market believes delivery doesn't matter. But the second enough participants demand the real thing, delivery, bars, inventory, paper becomes a promise that can't be kept. That is why the Asian Open matters. Asia is where physical appetite shows itself faster. It's where the premium reveals the truth. It's where the market asks, quietly but firmly, okay, show me the metal. Tonight that question gets louder. Now, I want you to keep two screens in your mind as Asia opens. Screen 1, the futures price, the flashing number. Screen 2, the physical premium, the spread that says what the real world is paying to actually hold an ounce. If futures are weak but premiums stay firm, that's the warning. That's the signal that the sell-off is not demand evaporating, it's paper being forced out. And forced out paper is not the same as a broken market. It's a stressed market, and stress is where breaks happen. Let's go one step deeper. Why would the physical side tighten right after a paper crash? Because crashes don't only scare buyers away. Crashes also wake buyers up. The serious buyer sees a paper slam and asks, is this real or is this a discount? If they suspect it's a discount, they move, immediately, into physical. Not tomorrow, not next week, immediately. And that creates the exact pattern we're seeing. Paper price down, physical supply down too, premiums up, availability gone. That is the signature of a market that is being shaken, not a market that is being abandoned. Now the exchange says margin hikes are risk management. Fine. Volatility increases, so collateral increases. But there's a second effect that never makes the press release. It kills participation. It pushes smaller players out. It concentrates the game into fewer hands. And fewer hands means the market becomes easier to steer. So what happens when you squeeze longs, thin participation, and then open the Asian session into a world where physical scarcity is screaming? You get a test. A stress test that can only produce two outcomes. Outcome 1. Paper breaks upward. The Asian Open comes in, sees the discount, and buying pressure hits the futures market to close the gap. Not because of hype, but because any trader who can access both markets will try to capture the spread. They buy paper, they sell into premium. They buy futures, they hedge against physical. They do the mechanical trade. And that buying pressure lifts the screen price, potentially fast. Outcome 2. Paper breaks downward first. Margin hikes trigger more forced selling. Stops get hit. Liquidation cascades. The screen prints a lower number. But, and this is the part most people miss, if paper breaks down while physical stays tight, the physical premium widens. And if the premium widens, the contradiction grows. And the bigger the contradiction, the more explosive the later correction becomes. So even in the bearish scenario, the internal tension builds. This is why tonight matters. Not because one session decides the entire future, but because one session reveals which side is stronger right now. Forced paper liquidation or stubborn physical demand. Now let's make this practical. What do you watch? What matters in real time? First, watch the premium behavior in Asia. If local pricing holds elevated, if retail and wholesale availability remains constrained, that means the physical bid is alive. Second, watch volume on the paper side. If the screen price moves on heavy volume during thin hours, that often means liquidation or a large program trade. That's not organic sentiment, that's a machine. Third, watch the speed of any rebound. A weak market drifts, a stressed market snaps. If you see fast reclaiming of levels after dips, that suggests buyers are waiting. Fourth, watch the gap itself. Is it narrowing because paper rises, or narrowing because physical collapses? Those are two very different stories. Now here's the cliffhanger nobody wants to face. What if the gap doesn't narrow? What if paper keeps trading as if silver is abundant, while physical trades as if silver is rare. That is the path to a credibility crisis. Because the paper market's authority depends on one belief, that the screen price is a fair reference for the real thing. When physical refuses that reference, the paper price becomes a private game. And private games end when someone demands settlement. That is why the margin shock is so important. It is increasing the cost of holding paper exposure at the exact moment physical is tightening. It's like tightening the seatbelt while the car is already skidding. So what should a rational person conclude from this? Not buy, not sell, not panic. The conclusion is simpler. The market is under strain, and strain reveals truth. The paper market is being forced into a smaller, more expensive arena. The physical market is being pulled into scarcity pricing, and Asia is the bridge where these two narratives fight. If you've ever watched a dam under pressure, you know the most dangerous moment is not when the river is calm. It's when the water is high and the gate is being adjusted. That's tonight. Now I want to address the psychological trap that will hit people over the next 24 hours. Volatility is a weapon. Big moves up and down are not just market dynamics. They are emotional extraction. They are designed, by the structure itself, to make you react. A sharp dip makes you feel stupid for holding. A sharp rip makes you feel late for not buying. Both emotions push you into the same mistake, acting on the screen instead of understanding the situation. So if you're watching tonight, don't let the ticker hypnotize you. Use it as a clue, not a command. Ask, does this move change the shortage? Does this move refill the dealer shelves? Does this move create new mine supply? Does this move dissolve premiums in Asia? If the answer is no, then the move is probably paper noise. And paper noise is loud right before a structural shift. Now let's talk about why Asia specifically has the power to force the issue. Because Asia is more connected to the physical flow of commodities. It's closer to manufacturing demand, closer to the industrial buyer, closer to the appetite that can't be turned off by a chart. A fund can close a position because margin went up. A factory can't close a production line because the screen price dipped. An industrial buyer doesn't care about your candlestick pattern. They care about input cost, availability, and delivery. And that is why the physical premium is a better truth meter than the futures chart. The chart is a story. The premium is a confession. So tonight, when the session opens, you're going to see two forces wrestling. Force 1, the margin squeeze, pushing paper longs out, increasing liquidation risk, compressing participants. Force 2, the physical pull, tight inventory, elevated premiums, real demand that doesn't respond to fear the same way paper does. And the result of that wrestling match will show up as either a snapback in paper price or an even uglier divergence. Either way, the market will be more honest by morning. Now I'm going to ask you two questions, and I want real answers in the comments because it tells me how you're thinking. First, do you believe the screen price is the true price? Or do you believe the true price is whatever you must pay to actually get metal in your hands? Second, if the physical premium stays elevated all week, what do you think breaks first, paper pricing or retail availability? Because those answers shape how you interpret every move from here. Now as we land this, let me give you the clean takeaway. If Asia opens and paper rises toward the physical signal, that is the market admitting the paper slam was temporary. If Asia opens and paper falls again while physical stays tight, that is the market increasing the pressure, not releasing it. And if physical suddenly becomes available everywhere at low premiums, then the shortage narrative weakens. But so far, that is not what we're seeing. We're seeing empty shelves. We're seeing paused sales. We're seeing premium pricing that refuses to bow to the paper chart. And we're seeing an exchange raising the cost of participation like it wants to reduce resistance. That's not normal. That's a setup. So here's what to do tonight. Don't get hypnotized by the first 5 minutes. Watch the first hour. Watch how quickly dips get bought or how cleanly rebounds fail. Watch whether premiums soften or stay stubborn. Watch whether liquidity is thin and violent. Because the market is not just moving tonight, it is deciding what it can pretend and what it must admit. One more layer, because this is the part that separates a routine sell-off from a potential regime change. Arbitrage is supposed to fix this. In a healthy market, if one region pays far more than another for the same metal, traders move supply. They buy where it's cheaper, they sell where it's expensive, and the spread collapses. That is how markets self-correct. But arbitrage only works when metal can move, when financing is available, and when the cheap price actually represents something deliverable. If the cheap price is cheap because it's paper, because you can buy a contract without touching a bar, then the arbitrage trade hits a wall. You can't ship a contract. You can't melt a promise. You can't load a spreadsheet into a truck. So the spread can persist, and it can even grow, because the paper market is no longer acting like a warehouse receipt. It's acting like a casino chip. And casinos can keep printing chips right up until someone asks to cash out. Now imagine what happens if more participants start asking that question at the same time. Not retail, not coin collectors, real users, real allocators, entities that don't care about narratives, only about procurement. They look at the spread and they think, if this much premium exists elsewhere, then the screen price is a gift, as long as I can convert it into metal. That is why delivery stress is the hidden danger in this setup. The moment conversion becomes difficult, delays, rationing, rising premiums, sudden rule changes, the paper market loses the one thing that keeps it trusted: convertibility. And when convertibility is questioned, everything reprices. This is also why margin hikes hit differently in a stressed market. In a calm market, higher margin is just higher collateral. In a strained market, higher margin becomes a choke point. It forces liquidation at the exact moment demand is trying to pull inventory out of the system. So you end up with a strange, almost paradoxical picture. The price can fall while scarcity increases. People see the falling price and assume less demand, but the scarcity says more demand. That contradiction is not stable. When contradictions become large enough, markets don't resolve them with gentle adjustments. They resolve them with gaps, with limit moves, with sudden repricing when liquidity disappears and the only orders left are desperate. And if you've never seen that before, you will be tempted to treat it like entertainment. Don't. It's not entertainment. It's plumbing. It's the pipes behind the wall shaking. Tonight is a plumbing test. If the pipes hold, the market stabilizes and the spread narrows. If the pipes crack, you won't get a polite announcement. You'll get it on the screen first, then on the shelves. And by the time the headlines arrive, the opportunity to understand it calmly will already be gone. If you want more of this kind of analysis, fast, direct, and focused on what matters, subscribe to this channel now. And if you found value here, share this with one person who thinks silver is just a chart. Because tonight is about to remind everyone, charts can lie, but inventory can't.